Welcome to the 11th lesson of SmartKnitter. Knit Instructions Level 1. Today, we will take a look at the feeder setting. Feeder setting is only available in color, knit simulation, and knit structure layer. In the feeder setting page, zones of the panel is on the left and color is on the right. The top part of the feeder shows the zone color, while the bottom part of the feeder shows the yarn color of the feeder. When you click on the feeder icon, the corresponding area on the panel will flash. Vice versa, when you click on the panel, the corresponding feeder icon flashes. The distance from panel edge for each feeder cannot be too close, otherwise the knitting machine's alarm will be triggered. If the yarn end is not selected, it is on the left by default. Different machine has different default settings. For example, Shima Siki machine has 2 sections of slots for each feeder, for left and right feeder. For Stole, all feeders are on the right by default. Let's add a green stripe on the panel and arrange the feeder for it. As there is an extra color, there is another feeder icon in the unassigned area. Drag the feeder icon to the appropriate feeder. There are extra properties we can set for each feeder. Right-click on the feeder to select the appropriate type. Feeder 4 is for knitting the right shoulder of the front panel using partial knitting. It is marked as Zone 2, green, and color gray. Select Partial Knit Feeder for Feeder 4. Note that there is a black outline around the feeder icon. Let's look at the machine code for this partial knit feeder. Feeder 4 comes in for locking from the left and is brought to the right of the panel afterwards. It enters from the right for knitting the right shoulder, then leave at the right side when it is done knitting. Let's take a look at the machine code if we uncheck the partial feeder option. Feeder 4 enters from the left side for locking and stays on the left side after locking. Feeder 4 is brought back into the panel from the left side a few revolutions before the start of neck opening with front tucks. Thus, there will be floats on the back of the panel. Feeder 4 leaves the panel on the right side after knitting. Next, let's add a plaited yarn for the sweep. Zone 3, yellow. 1A represents the main yarn, while 1B represents the plaited yarn lycra elastine. Drag the icon to the appropriate feeder. As you can see in the machine code, feeder 3 and 5 are used in knitting the sweep, where feeder 3 is at the front. After knitting the sweep, feeder 5 is brought to the right, and feeder 3 continues to knit the body of the panel. We could also use 2 feeders to knit at the same time, if the machine has 2 systems. When Knit with Duo Feeders is selected, an extra icon will appear. Drag to the appropriate feeder. The body is now knitted using feeder 3 and 5. Feeder 4 is used for partial knitting in the front panel. However, since the back panel doesn't require partial knitting, it is recommended to add a virtual feeder 4. This would prevent unintended release of feeder when we knit different panels continuously. We could copy feeder settings to other panels that shares the same setup. In the Translation Setup page, we could select Machine Model, Gauge, and Number of System. Different options are available for different machines. Select accordingly. In the MC Setting tab on the right, we could set tension, roller, and speed. In the Translation Setting tab, we can select different methods for bind-off, narrowing, etc. We will go through these in later classes. In the top right corner, we could import and export these settings as template for later use. For the Jacquard Knit Order tab, we could set different knitting order for the feeders. For example, in Combination 1, the feeder order is 3, 4, 5, 6. In the option line layer, we could set which combination of feeder order we use for each course. Let's check the feeder order in the machine code. In courses that use Combination 1, the feeder order is 3, 4, 5, 6. While in courses that use Combination 2, the feeder order is 4, 3, 6, 5. This marks the end of this lesson. Thank you for watching.